people no longer mind that the media that they're watching is biased. That
But at least admit it. When the media is biased, there's no problem if you want to be biased, but say we're pro this or we're admit it.
Yeah. Well, here we are. What's the date? February 11th?
Yep.
Almost Valentine's Day. People can use that as a reference. And we seem like Israel's been fighting this war against Hamas, and they have been egreged by a tremendous massacre and bombardment in a war, and the press has now joined to vilify Israel against what they say, well, Hamas is on some kind of a moral equivalency. What do you think about giving this equivalency to?
There is no equivalence, because who starts all these wars? It started by the people who hate Jews and who admit it, and it's in their charter. They started the war on October 7th, and unfortunately there is a lot of media bias towards the poor Palestinians. That's how they try to portray them. But I've lived on that side. I've lived on the side of the enemies of Israel, and I know their heart as an Egyptian, and I know what's in their heart. I know how they view Israel. I know how they view Jews, and there is no way we can deny there is very deep anti-Semitism in Arab culture in general, and also in Islam in particular. And they're feeding each other. So with this anti-Semitism, we have to admit it. The Arab world until today, they've never admitted that they have a problem with anti-Semitism. They have a problem with Jew hatred. Nobody ever asked them. Nobody ever asked a grand sheikh or an imam the question of why is there such hatred of Jews, and where is the source of that?
Do you think that that's the basis of the Arab-Israeli conflict?
Absolutely.
The basis?
The basis of the Arab-Israeli conflict comes from Arab culture that is totally anti-Semitic. I think it's just Jew hatred in general, regardless whether they are darker skinned Jews or lighter skinned Jews. It's not race. It's the hatred of the religion is really engraved in the nature of Islam itself.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Does Islam teach bigotry?
Absolutely. And also it's in the history of Muhammad himself. Muhammad himself had a lot of wars and attacks on Jewish tribes and in Medina. And unfortunately, Muslims don't want to separate the fact that Muhammad fought with Jews and attributed to that period of time and separated from the ideology. Muslims today are taking the fact that Muhammad had a problem with Jews, and they're still continuing the tradition.
And is that just in the fringe? If I'm speaking,
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Is that just towards in the fringe of the extremists, or is that in the mainstream?
It's totally mainstream. It's totally because that's how Islam is taught. Islam is totally focused on the enemies of Islam. Islam is one of the few religions. Islam is one of the few religions that is totally focused on its enemies more than the spiritual journey of the average Muslim.
So even this discussion here between us, even this discussion, if it were to be put on YouTube, will get complaints from Muslims, and YouTube will remove the video because YouTube is not aware of this. What used to be, if there were debates between Christianity and Judaism, they say, well, that's religious discussion and exploration, but anything that comes connected to criticizing Islam has become forbidden.
I think it's because of the power exerted on YouTube by wealthy Muslim countries and their power in numbers. The power in numbers. And but I hope YouTube will allow it because it's the truth. There is no doubt that in the Quran and in the Hadith there are verses that's very anti-Jewish and anti-Jews and actually promoting violence against Jews.
How about anti-Christian?
And anti-Christian, anybody who's not a Muslim. So anybody who's not a Muslim is a kafir. It's called a kafir. And whether they're Jews or Christians or Hindu or any other religion. And Islam, unfortunately, is totally focused on people who don't follow it more than people who follow it. It's focused on being angry about who is not following my religion. And that is not a very healthy aspect of Islam. Islam should nourish its own followers spiritually. But it's more focused on the ones who are not following us. Why aren't they following us? And if they are not following us, then they have to be our enemy. And Islam has to get rid of that in this day and age to get along with the rest of the world.
Yes, but what about the taboo? If I can ask, what about the taboo on Christians asking these questions, putting these questions forward? Should there be some recognition that a lot of what's taking over the West is as a result of people feeling paralyzed by the society?
Absolutely. There are a lot of people are asking questions about Islam and nobody wants to face it head on. And I think this is not even beneficial to Muslims themselves. And analyzing your own religion is a healthy thing. And I'm not against Muslims. It's just Islam needs to self-analyze and self-critique a little bit. And it's not, unfortunately, it's not allowed under Islamic law to self-criticize and self-critique. You're immediately called a kafir so you become the enemy again. But I think a healthy criticism, a healthy self-criticism would do them a big favor.
So at the moment, Israel is trying to get the city of Rafah, and trying to be able to get rid of Hamas, who's in Rafah. Would you explain, just for the people who may be seeing you for the first time, what's your connection to these areas and your family connection?
I grew up as a child in Gaza, so I'm very familiar with Rafah and Gaza. And I know the psychology of the people there. It hasn't changed much. The existence of Gaza itself is totally focused on not making their population happy or making themselves more successful. Like any normal society, how can we be better? The existence of Gaza is focused on destroying Israel. That's the focus of the society. So the leaders of the Gaza city are the political leaders of Gaza are totally focused on destroying Israel. So I'm not surprised that Hamas is the leader of Gaza, because that's what they want. A lot of people are asking, oh, is Hamas like Gaza, or Gaza is Hamas? I think they're the same.
Yeah, including UNRWA?
UNRWA is on the side of Hamas,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but they don't want to admit it, but they are.
So this aspect, if I can ask, this aspect of the civilian casualties, or the collateral damage that's been caused, and relying on the statistics from the Gaza Ministry of Health, would they lie?
Absolutely, they would lie. Of course. The whole Arab side regarding the Israeli-Arab conflict is based on lies. They always accuse Israel of initiating a war, or they did this and that's why we're doing that. I mean, even the Gaza attack on January 7th, they had the audacity to blame Israel for it, even though it was a total attack from Gaza on Israel. Totally unexpected, and planned for months and months before it happened. And they're still blaming Israel for it. So, unfortunately, I know both sides. I grew up there, and I know who's the side that wants peace, and I know who's the side that doesn't want peace.
And who is the side that doesn't want peace?
The Arab side, the Gaza side. Actually, there is a little change now happening. There is a few Arab countries now that are not really supportive of all these, attacks on Israel. They're done with it. But still, there are some. Where are they getting their funds? Where is Hamas getting their finances? It has to be from other Arab countries. So there's still, even though there's less support of a war with Israel, and it's not as bad as it used to be in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, but it's still existing.
Now, what about the media that the Arabs are receiving and now sharing with the Muslims throughout the West, throughout the world, who are essentially seeing like Nazi propaganda, and they're convinced. So when they come out in March with indignation because they've seen it, somehow that's fabricated. How can we cope now? Are we prepared to cope with an idea that the truth has been distorted, and propagandized people are among us in London and Paris and Belgium?
Well, from my personal experience as a child and as a young woman, I've witnessed the 67 war and the 73 war, and I heard the propaganda as a child, and it was always blaming Israel initiated it. Yeah. So it was all a lie. And I really thought when I was a child that Israel started the wars. And I only knew that it was really us who started the wars. The Arab side is, I learned it when I studied the history and I studied the truth. So it's not uncommon for the Arab side, the Hamas side, to lie.
So what would you say to people then who are watching how Washington is twisting this and saying Israel's going too far, especially where leaders like Ismail Haniyeh, they're in the business of sacrificing people in order to exact aid that they can steal and put in Swiss bank accounts. When people are looking at this and saying, well, Israel is bad, all this reportage, what are people to think?
Unfortunately, there is a huge number of Arab students on American college campuses, and they are spreading misinformation. And other American students are believing it because they really can't believe that somebody can lie. and there is a lot of Americans who take things at face value, and they can't believe that a whole culture can lie. So unfortunately, the truth is the Arab side started this October 7 war, and now they are disputing it, and propaganda is everywhere. And
do you think the Western media has bought into it, and they're continuing to propagate that angle?
absolutely, Western media, the media in general, is a leftist media.
Around the world?
Yeah, in general, and they are a little bit pro-Arab for a reason. Arabs have a lot of money, and the media is impressed with powerful countries with a lot of wealth. And what's Israel? Israel is a tiny little country that you can hardly see on the Middle East map, and surrounded by very powerful and wealthy countries, and of course their propaganda weighs heavily on Western media. But it's not true. It's not true. The war started by Hamas and is continuing by Hamas. And if you don't see it, then you're a fool.
By referring to Hamas as the culprit here, aren't we whitewashing the idea of Palestinianism, Palestinian nationalism? Hamas is not an anomaly, an aberration. Hamas is part of the Palestinian state that they're forcing Israel to cede territory alongside them, in the midst of them, to create. So should we at this point just consider to see, well, this is Hamas, but the West Bank is better and fine?
I'm sorry to say that Hamas is Gaza, and Hamas is the West Bank. The culture of Hamas is the culture of the West Bank and Gaza.
So
And
a Palestinian state be like?
a Palestinian state, if it's ever created, it will be a state devoted totally to annihilating Israel. And besides, geographically, they are not fit to be a state.
Because why?
Because they are, first of all, they are separate. And then size-wise, they cannot live on their own. They are very tiny, and the best you can call them is like a little emirate or something. It's not even a state. It can be a state. It's not viable to become a state. The territory, frankly, the territory on the Jordan side should be part of Jordan, and Gaza eventually, in my opinion, should be part of Egypt to solve that problem. But that problem will never be solved in the current Arab League policies. The Arab League forbids any Arab country from absorbing the West Bank and Gaza.
Why?
Because they want the problem to continue. They don't want it to be resolved.
Because it's a distraction for the public to look at there and not how the...
Absolutely, that's one reason. But also, it is the Arab-Israeli conflict is regarded with emotion, with strong emotions, by many people in the Arab world. And if it's resolved, it's almost like poof. What are we going to do then? It's essential for the dynamics of the politics. The political systems of many countries rely on showing the Arab-Israeli conflict as their main problem to direct the attention of the populations towards. And if this is gone, then what is going to be their the focus of these countries? it has to be another stage of trying. How about becoming a better country? How about giving people more freedom? How about giving people more wealth? How about competing in world success and self betterment? And that is another stage that many Arab countries, not every, hasn't reached yet. So, with the disappearance of the Arab-Israeli conflict, this will necessitate that people will start expecting more from their governments.
Two more questions. What about Obama and his essence in both Arab culture, his own mentality, and what's happening now to vilify Israel? Do you think that that the U.S. has taken on Obama's influence?
When it comes to Obama, in my opinion, he represents the 60s mental political atmosphere of the Arab world. He doesn't represent the current. The current atmosphere in the Arab world is starting to mellow because they don't want to have wars anymore. Obama comes from his memory as a child of his father, who was a Muslim. He's from Kenya. His father was from Kenya, and he was a Muslim. So he still, when I hear him speak about the Arab-Israeli conflict or the Middle East, it almost reminds me of somebody who hasn't outgrew the 60s. And he's a little bit behind the curve.
And what is the essence of that thinking?
He still thinks that all of the Arab world is still having this Islamic. He still thinks that the Arab world is still living in the 60s, wanting to destroy Israel, and they're totally focused on that. The Arab world today is not totally focused on that anymore. Yes, there is still groups like Hamas and the radical groups who are still like that, but it's not wholeheartedly, And I think Obama is a little bit behind the curve. He thinks he knows everything, and that's why when he became president and went to Cairo, his first foreign trip after he became president was he went and made a speech in Cairo. And that speech was, it was not, he was like speaking to Cairo in the 60s. He was not, he wasn't, he wasn't, I don't think he impressed them as much as he thinks he did.
What about, on the topic of Obama, what about his communist influences? His uncle or stepfather, Frank Marshall Davis, and his mother, and that whole, his grandfather was CIA, for instance, who was also working in communism. Do you think that there may be a Marxist element in this Islamism movement throughout the West?
Actually, Islamism and communism get along, at least temporarily, because they share the same goals of defeating the West.
A revolution?
Yeah.
A conquest?
Yeah, they want to conquest the West, and Obama comes from that ideology, and I don't know what's in his mind right now, but he was disappointed after he came back from Cairo. He realized that that's not the same world I thought it was.
What about this Marxist element in the Democratic Party today? Even here we see that in the cities with the attracting rioters who know that they'll be let off with no bail and no punishment.
Yeah.
This is fomenting a revolution, and it seems like they're marching together.
Unfortunately, America today has elements of that, and we're going to have to live with it. And hopefully, they will not grow. But most people in America really are not yet at that level. There is a move. Most people are. Many of them are not aware. And many Americans are not interested in that. They're happy. They have good jobs. They have a nice family. They want to go on their vacation, and they are living their lives.
But the economy is falling apart. I mean,
well, if the economy falls apart, then that will attract more people to join the disfranchised groups, of which Islamists are, and communists, when they get together. So hopefully we keep our economy good, and these groups hopefully will shrink.
do you believe that Christians should remain on the sidelines on these issues?
Christians and Jews should not stay silent. And I hate it when I see people, when the Jews complain or Christians complain, they tell them, but you can't say that because you're Jewish, or you can say that because you're Christian. I'm sorry. Everybody has the right to speak and to complain, just like everybody else. And that includes Jews, and they have legitimate reason to speak out against their oppression. And Christians, especially in the Middle East, they're horribly oppressed. Christians in Egypt and Christians, they are now a minority, and they used to be the majority in Lebanon, and now they're a minority. And then there is a few Christians all over the Islamic world, and they are very oppressed. They can't even practice their religion in public. They can't put a Christmas tree shown from their window. So, Nigeria, they kill them. They are killing Christians. So there is a lot to say about the problems of the Middle East regarding Christians and Jews. And I think Christians and Jews have the right to speak out. Yes, they are the minority, but in Israel they are the majority, and they have the right to speak. And they have to know that there is a lot of people around the world who support them, who support the Jews, who support Israel, who support the Christians in the Middle East.
So when it comes to these street protests, do you think that Christians have a responsibility in this dispute?
Absolutely. I don't know why Christians in America are silent regarding how Christians around the world are being treated. And I think they should be more interested in and more vocal. Unfortunately, for some reason, it could be a religious reason, like God will take care of it. They look at it from that point of view, like it's God's will or something like that. But I think God would want them to speak on behalf of their brothers in Christ. They have to speak.
Is speaking enough, or should they show up?
And they should. They should show up and demonstrate. If there's demonstrations against Christianity or against Judaism or against Israel, they should show up and carry the Israeli flag. Like I did. I stand in some of these demonstrations, and I carry the Israeli flag. And I'm not Israeli, but there's a lot of Americans who love Israel, and we're supposed to express it with strength and with conviction that we are on the right side.
Yes, because look at what the Muslim invasion of Europe in terms of population has done in places like Switzerland and in France, where the churches are disappearing and being converted into mosques?
What the West doesn't understand is if there is a vacuum of religion, it will be filled by Islam. If you abandon your Jewish faith, if you abandon your Christian faith, if you close your churches or you close your synagogues, it will be bought and filled by Islam. So, and we all need faith. We all need faith. And a world without faith is a very, very sad world.
But is it purely about faith, or is it also culture too?
Absolutely, it's culture and faith, and we have to support, even culturally, Israel. We have to support Israel, even if we're not that religious. Because whatever happens to Israel is going to happen in Europe. Whatever happens to Israel is going to happen in Europe, and it's going to happen in America. So Israel is just the canary in the canary in the coal mine. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you just make finally the distinction between Islam and Islamism, or Islam? What are Islamists?
That's an expression that came out. Islam and Islamism. It came out after 9/11, and they say it's an Islamist, and this expression is new, and it came to distinguish. Don't insult Islam, but you can insult Islamism, which means it's a radical side of Islam that we don't like. That's how they want to portray it.
But isn't it also the politicization of the faith?
Yeah. Yeah, but Islam is a political religion.
By nature?
By nature. Islam is by nature. Islam, in my opinion, is maybe 60% political and 40% spiritual. Islam is more of a political movement to stand against the Bible. Islam is a political movement created Islam was created as a movement, an anti-biblical movement, to fight the Bible wherever it goes.
But when Muslims say that when they recognize Jesus as a prophet, that Jesus was Muslim, or they recognize the other, or Moses, they recognize that, they're not rejecting the Bible entirely.
Well, if you want to stand against a Bible, you can't say, I reject it completely. You have to claim that you're part of it, and then you have a revolution against it. And that's how the smart way of doing it. We're in trouble. We're fighting the eternal war between good and evil. Hopefully, the side of Islam, which is composed of human beings, and that side will realize that they're fighting, they're not on the good side of history, and they will stop, or not completely stop, because there's always going to be elements that don't want to stop, but it will weaken. Hopefully, it will weaken internally. That's my hope.
Yeah, but do we need more? Do we need to do more than just pray?
Yeah, we have to fight them. We have to fight them. Israel should never ever apologize for fighting back at the people who did to them what happened on October 7th. They should never apologize for that.
Some people believe that Israel should apologize for the collateral damage caused in eradicating Hamas and the casualties that were caused during this war. What do you think about that?
If Hamas didn't want to hurt their own people, they should not have done October 7th.
You think they
And they don't care. I don't think Hamas cares about their own people. And I blame Hamas for it. I don't blame Israel. Israel has to defend itself. What are they going to do? It's either surrender or fight back, and they have a duty to fight back.
Good. Nonie Darwish, she's a great woman, author of Now They Call Me Infidel, right? You say kafir is infidel, and you have a stake.
I have 4 books, and they're all on Amazon, and what else? What do I say?
Are you publishing in social media?
Well, sometimes I write articles here and there, publish.
Are you putting them on your website, Arabs for...
Well, no,
what's your website?
No, I don't have a website now. I'm not very active now.
You have a Twitter account?
Yes, I do. I have Twitter, I have Facebook.
And do you get invitations to speak?
Yes, I do. Actually, I'm speaking next month. I'm available to speak, absolutely.
Where?
Anytime. I speak around the world. I spoke in Europe, and I spoke in Australia, in Canada, in the United States, of course. So.
Can people contact you? How would they contact you? Through Twitter or Facebook?
Yeah, Twitter or Facebook. Nonie Darwish.
And they can find your books where?
Amazon, all the bookstores, everywhere.
That's great. Nonie, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, wonderful.